really important programme that I think you are all, or those of you who are on this programme, I think you are our 5th cohort. And I don't know where the time has gone, but as you know, this was about how do we create a very different leadership in Nottingham across the public sector, health, charity, everything. How do we change things? And that's where you all come in, and your predecessors. So it's such a pleasure to invite you to have Provoke. There you provoke us, people. We are ready to be provoked. So, and in that lovely way, which is, you know, being provoked to think a bit differently and so on. So let me hand over to, who's going to do the intro? Who's
Me.
going to, Tracy?
Myself, yeah.
Yay.
Hi everyone, just a quick introduction. I'm Tracy Noble and I work for Nottingham University Hospitals. And first of all, to say a big thank you for inviting us, FLNL cohort of 2021, to take part in this evening's Provoke. And today we're going to try and raise some awareness about being an ally. And this can be done through spoken word, lived experiences of being an ally and needing an ally. But just a bit of context first. This past year has highlighted some stark realities. The Corona-19 pandemic has shown some stark differences and inequalities for BAME people. And recent Public Health England data analysis affirms this, that BAME people were disproportionately affected. And also, last year, it's just coming back into the news again, there was a tragic death of George Floyd and the unfolding chain of events in the USA. For many of us, this isn't new. It's not a new experience. We've been experiencing racism from as little as school age, as teenagers, young people, and in the workplace. I remember at school being told that I would never pass a CSE. I'm old, so a CSE, let alone a GCE. And I came away with 6, but that did give me more grit and determination, and that's not the same for a lot of people. And also, as a black woman or woman of colour, I grew up in the 80s, and I always remember seeing my brothers stopped and searched for no reason at all. And unfortunately, this is still happening, once again, disproportionately for particularly black men and also BAME people. And there's also the recent, once again in the news, maternity scandal, where the inequalities have been shown and that deaths in BAME women is far more than perhaps non-BAME people. So, as I said, today we are going to raise awareness, or try and raise awareness, of ways our non-BAME colleagues, friends and family can help support their BAME colleagues by being an ally. So first we ask ourselves, what is an ally? What is it? One definition is, allies are people from a group who don't suffer discrimination, but who provide support to those that are discriminated against. And the answer lies in people making a choice to behave differently and addressing even the smallest acts of racism or microaggression on their sphere of influence. We just need more people to advocate for BAME staff, not just 1 or 2. And in the words of Shola Richard, she's a workplace activist, she says, having white privilege doesn't mean that your life isn't difficult. It simply means that your skin colour isn't one of the things contributing to your life difficulties. And, you know, just in day to day, when BAME people of colour want to talk about their experiences, we just want you to listen. Most of the time, acknowledgement and knowing that we've been heard is just what we need. And it's really great, and I really do mean this, it's really great if you want to be an ally, but we as BAME people, the BAME community, we need to know that you've got our back when we need it most, and that you won't shy away from difficult conversations that take place when it comes to promoting BAME people. It's like in the coffee room, if people still use coffee rooms, I still do. But in the coffee room, if you hear something inappropriate, what do? Do you turn the other cheek, look on your phone, or do you stand up and do you challenge that conversation, that comment? And being an ally is not just about intent. It requires proactive action. Saying that you're not racist, it's not an action. And you often hear people say, I don't see colour. Well, of course you see colour. If your eyesight's working, we all see colour around us in our lives. And this statement does not show your support. In a lot of ways, it shows your ignorance. So what can we do? What kind of things could we be doing? I mean, one of the most important things is to reflect on our own faults. We all have a little bit of racism in us, and the only way to unlearn racist behaviour is by accepting that you engage in it, however big or small, and then apply it to everyone around you. Shout out, or not shout out, but challenge that person in your family who perhaps has racist beliefs, racist comments. And people who say they're not racist, have that informed conversation, discuss amongst yourself. You know what's right, so spread the word. Some people just won't listen unless it comes out of a white person's mouth. And we've got to stop relying on black people, BAME people, people of colour to do all the hard work for us. If we're interested and we want to look at ourselves, there are so many things at our fingertips, information on the internet. Do the seeking out yourself. Don't rely on us. And be consistent. Be consistent in what you do. Don't just hashtag Black Lives Matters. You've got to do and see. You've got to support black businesses or BAME businesses. And you've got to continue promote and challenge consistently. And in the words of the great Martin Luther King Jr., in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. I'm now going to hand over to Gina Francis from Nottingham City Homes.
Thanks, Tracy. So I wanted to contribute a little to the conversation, and the way that I like to express myself is poetry and spoken word. So I've thrown something together, just basically describing a few situations where BAME allies can be so important and could have been so important for the BAME community throughout their lives. And I've titled it, Do You See? Do you see when he enters the room and his expression is that of apprehension and nervousness at what challenges he might face today? What off-the-cuff comments that weren't meant in that way might he face today? Do you approach him and welcome him warmly into the room that holds no one or very few others who look like him? Or do you assume that his face of apprehension is one of anger and hostility towards you, causing you to feel uneased and unsettled throughout your day? Do you avoid the man in the room whose face looks like stone and is constantly told that he should smile more, it may never happen? But it already happened. The thought already crossed your mind that he was standoffish, unapproachable, not relatable. What could he possibly have to offer? But he is here. You just didn't see. Instead of calling her mother into your office at her primary school to tell her mother that you believe she has an attitude problem and that she gave you a dirty look in the classroom at school that day, Could you have asked her how she was feeling that day, if anything was wrong? Did you think that you might have misinterpreted that dirty look? She is a child after all. Did you see her in any other way? Could you have taken the opportunity to allow her to respond rather than to assume? You didn't see her that day. You didn't see the damage that the words spilling from your mouth could have had upon a 7-year-old brown girl growing up in a society that was set up for her to lose. She couldn't play Mary or an angel in your school nativity. She never thought why she wasn't seen as angelic or pure. She didn't know you didn't see her. Do you remember the time when you screamed from your lungs that racism isn't a thing? Did you say that to protect your brown girlfriend? Or did you say that so you didn't have to deal with the looming awkward conversation that had been brewing all evening because one of your friends used the term black and looked at your girlfriend immediately apologized for any offense caused? Did you see how that made her feel so much worse? That her feelings were completely swept under the carpet and the comment was swiftly blown away? If she were to respond in any other way but a delicate smile that said, "It's okay," she would have been singled out as too sensitive and angry. Worse still, another angry black female. So she stayed quiet. She didn't react or respond, so she wasn't seen as any of the labels constantly bestowed upon her throughout her life. She had learned to not be seen. Did you see his name on his job application? You couldn't pronounce it, so you skipped over it to the next name that you deemed comfortable. He was the perfect candidate for the role, but you skipped to the next name that sounded more like yours, the name that said, "I'm like you." But he is like you. He is just like you. He takes his kids to the park after school. He buys his partner flowers for no other reason than he loves her. And he plays football every Sunday with his mates. He had learned that his name was one that sometimes was never seen. And now I'm going to pass over to Jermaine Benjamin from Nottingham City Homes.
Everyone, can you all hear me? I'm just going to give an experience of a time when I could have done with an ally. I could have done with an ally 3 years ago when I had to fight to save my job. I was accused of not doing something that I did not need to do. If I was asked by my manager, I could have just explained that I didn't need to do it and the reason why, and it would have made sense. However, it was escalated to HR and the assistant director without my knowledge. I thought I would get some support from my manager, however, I received the opposite. I was given no prior notice that this was happening, nor had a conversation with my manager about it. My manager failed to advise me of the meeting on what it was about, and that I had a right to representation. I only found out what it was about when I turned up thinking it was a casual meeting. That's when I found out I was actually in some form of trouble. This wasn't the first time the manager in question didn't support someone that looked like me. I received a lot of calls and messages from my colleagues and teammates, giving some support, silent support, which was very appreciative. However, no one spoke out publicly, which made it harder for me to prevent any wrongdoing. The whole ordeal took about 7 weeks. This was at a time when my wife was 8 months pregnant. I was sent to another department as I was unable to do my role. I constantly pushed each week for a hearing date so I can actually clear my name. However, that day never came and everything was just dropped and I was told to go back to my job the next following day. I will now pass it on to Hilary Fife-Harden from Nottingham City Homes.
Thanks, Jermaine. I am a BAME ally when I challenged my mother-in-law patiently, politely, and continuously about views she had been brought up around. I let her know that her brother could not be both not a racist and a member of the BNP. To me, generational racism is racism, and our generation should be prepared to educate. I'm a BAME ally when I use my position at work to encourage sharing of Black history and open discussion about the education system and its white bias in a team meeting. I invited people to share what they wanted to have other people understand about their history, open to learning always, giving others opportunities to learn too. I'm a BAME ally when I chose a school for my children based on the diversity of its pupils and staff for the best hope of a proper and rounded education. I am a BAME ally when I took on a case at work in social housing where the only Black resident in a scheme is being treated differently by the other residents and staff. I offered support and encouragement to this person, despite what was said about me, and despite the risk of complaint against me. I stood my ground against the large number of other tenants who wanted me to act differently, rather than question them about their perceived fear. I calmly and gently explained. I'm a BAME ally when I challenge the importance of getting names right for our residents, regardless of background. I politely tell officers to ask again. Don't laugh at a name you can't pronounce or find difficult to spell. Ask until you can. I'm a BAME ally when I stick to my values, even for the little things. Beginning to find comfort in my discomfort. I learn, I ask, I'm getting to know my own privilege and strive to use this in areas of inequality. I want to know, how can I do more? And now I'm going to pass over to Lucy Eiley from Futures to pose us some questions for us to think about in the breakout rooms. Thank you.
Thanks, Hilary. So thank you all for your time and thank you for listening. We're now going to go to the breakout rooms for 20 minutes, and the questions we'd like to discuss with you are: how can BAME allies be promoted in the workplace, and what are the barriers preventing people being an ally? Just while we've got a couple of minutes left, I'd just like to introduce Elaine Barnabas from Nottingham City Homes, who's going to tie all the ends up with the beginning. Over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me all? Right. We've spent some time this evening exploring two questions. How can BAME allies be promoted at a workplace? And what are the barriers preventing people from being allies? We've heard some really powerful stories, poetry, highlighting challenges faced by the people in the BAME community. Many of these challenges have been experienced from childhood. We have had encouraging stories about being an ally, stepping up, challenging stereotypes, offering support, being the voice when it's needed most. Many interesting points have been raised in this discussion, and I wish we could continue talking about them, but clearly there is a lot to learn and think about, which requires both sides, the BAME and non-BAME, to step out of our comfort zone, have the courage to speak out, and playing an active part listening to BAME colleagues. We chose this title, Don't Be a Crab in a Bucket. Why did we choose this? If you picture crabs inside a bucket, how do these crabs behave when one tries to come out? Typically what happens is that the moment the first crab tries to climb out, it's as if there's a sudden realization that there is a way out, and the rest of the crabs try to do the same thing, not knowingly that their actions are actually pulling the person who's trying to come out, pulling them down, stopping them from exploring and experiencing better opportunities. As members of the BAME community, we would like to encourage non-BAME counterparts and colleagues to use their white privilege to promote equality and inclusion in the workplace.